Let me know when you guys are ready.
Okay, you guys are good and you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to start then. Are we all set?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening, welcome to the Town of Groveland Finance Board meeting for today, October 9th, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:01 PM. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We have the ones from July 10th, 2024, and the minutes from September 11th, 2024. So if we want to start with the July 10th minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I don't think I was there, so I
You were
can't.
not, so I will make the motion to approve the minutes for July 10th, 2024. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Ruth will.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that? No, okay. We do have one member who is participating remotely, so for any votes taken tonight, we will have to do a roll call vote. So I will start with Adam.
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
And then myself, yes, with Bill abstaining. Then we can move to the minutes for the September 11th, 2024 meeting.
Move to approve the minutes from September 11, 2024.
I will second that. And then, is there any discussion? Okay, no discussion. Adam,
Yes.
Ruth, Jim, you weren't here. You were enjoying a vacation. Ruth,
Yes.
myself, yes,
Yes.
and Bill. Okay, great. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is an update on the fiscal year '25 budget. Ellen is here. I did distribute her revenue and expense reports. Ellen, I don't know if you want to give just a quick update. I know you indicated there was no concern at this time, but
No, there's no concern. I looked at it a little closer, and there were a few accounts, my sort of quick look is anything that's over 25% as of September 30th, which you guys have the August reports, because I still have a couple of things left to do for September close. But in looking at expenses as of September 30th, there really wasn't anything sticking out, anything that was over, spent more than 25%, was a reason for it. It's an account that it has, technology. It has, all the software licenses are paid at the beginning of the year, so it looks like we have this huge expenditure and that we could possibly overspend, but then it evens out
there's no
by the
other
end of the year.
expenses.
So everything was running as usual, and revenue was running as usual, still a 98, 99% collection rate. So we're just cruising along so far.
Great, perfect. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to look at them, if there's any questions that have come up. I'll take the quiet as a no, we're all set, so
No,
thank,
I think it looks good.
thank you, Ellen.
I didn't see anything, but while we're on the subject, I think this is your spreadsheet, the debt principal payment schedule. There were two that went out, one was superseded by the other one, but I don't remember which one. Do you know offhand, like, how can I tell really quick which one is the good one, and which one may be the good one, so I can get rid of that one?
Is that all our financial, the waterfall schedule?
Yeah.
Should only be one, which changed the 10-year schedule in the financial indicator. Because I realized I only had 9 years in the 10-year column.
Oh, so the debt principal schedules, they're the same,
Yes.
okay. Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. The next item on the agenda is just an update on the Groveland Summer Recreation Program. There's been some discussion at various board meetings over the continuance of this program, so wanted to make sure we were able to get an update on kind of what the process is. I know the Board of Selectmen voted at their last meeting to put out a request for independent third party to run a program for us, but also wanted to kind of keep all of us in the loop too from a financial aspect as to what we might be able to do and assist with in terms of determining a structure for the program, should we choose to continue it.
So I can give a brief overview of the presentation for the Finance Board, since it was not provided to the Finance Board. I had been before the Recreation Committee as well as the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, so I can go through briefly, since I know some of you are up to date with some of the slides that were shared, but I think for the general public, it might be beneficiary, if you would agree.
Sure.
So the first slide is a brief overview of the summer program from 2018 onward. I would like to note that, and I did realize during further review of the finances that the revenue in 2024 is overstated. There is additional monies that were put into the account, about $8,800 that we received from unclaimed property through the state. The treasurer was alerted that there was additional revenue, so she submitted a form. So that figure that you see up there of the $120,000 includes that unclaimed property. That is not also the registration fees and the revenue taken in by the program in that particular year. You'll also see a column underneath each year for the number of registrants. You'll see that it fluctuates. Obviously, with the pandemic and the program not running in 2020, you'll see a decrease. And then you'll also see the program slightly increase. And then, as noted in conversations with others, it is important to note that in 2023, the Cedar Dale program here in Groveland closed. So in addition to the outreach that was done by the director at that point in time, that is something that we should consider when we look at those numbers. And then you'll see in 2024, that number dropped significantly to 117. So that's due to a multitude of reasons, one of which is that you'll see in the expense category is that we removed field trips, and we also did not spend nearly as much in summer program supplies. So for the number of registrants that we have for the 2024 summer season, you'll see that we do have in a program structure a 3-week minimum. So that's why you'll see the largest number of participants at the 30 for the 3 weeks. And then you'll see the registrants as you go through for the various weeks. So the total number of registrants was 117. So when we took a closer look, and we're still trying to look at some of the data within the active platform, which is how people register for the program, a breakdown shows that there's a total of 86 families, and 67 of those families are Groveland residents, and 19 of those families are from other communities. That is just important to note because some families send more than one child to the summer program. So currently, the director had resigned, the former director had resigned due to other employment opportunities, so we currently do not have a director in that position. Over the last few years, the current salary for that director has ranged from $35 an hour to $40 an hour with various hours that they work. Typically, they'll start to assemble the program in January and offer the program discount or early sign-up that goes out in January. This last year, when we weren't sure if we were going to be moving forward, the amount of emails that we had from parents planning for the summer was a lot because there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not we were going to be moving forward. So a lot of the work begins in January, and then it slowly starts to pick up throughout the spring as they plan for field trips and activities and theme weeks and things of that nature. Then they start the hiring process with the counselors. Once they hire the counselors, then they have to do the training, they have to do the onboarding, and then the summer program begins, and then the summer program ends in August, and then the director is then responsible for making sure that they give a recap as to the year, making sure they close out all of the invoices, payrolls finally submitted, et cetera. So it is not necessarily a seasonal job, if you will, since it starts really in January and it ends really in the beginning of October. Therefore, there does come some liabilities with that, given the fact that that particular position will no longer qualify as a seasonal employee and have exemption under the unemployment laws, and therefore, during that time, could potentially file for unemployment. That also opens us up for benefits and other labor practices, which we would have to abide by moving forward. And as you can see below, there's also challenges with hiring a municipal summer program director because it's seasonal to some extent in nature. It requires a specialized skills, limited pay, and there's a high responsibility because there's a lot of expectations from parents and those who attend the program. So some of the other liabilities that I just wanted to bring to attention is obviously child safety, accidents and injuries, staff conduct and misconduct, medical emergencies, financial liabilities, and discrimination and inclusion. A lot of these are self-explanatory, but it's just important to note that, you know, these are public employees, they are town employees, and that makes it very challenging. And a lot of the different issues that arise with the program are very unique in nature. They're not your standard typical human resource issues. They are very complex in nature. They involve adolescents. They involve, you know, counselors who are assuming duties at 16 to 18 to 20 years old with limited training to deal with certain issues that may arise. So it can be very challenging at times. And then this slide just gives you a little bit of information about revolving funds. Revolving funds are supposed to go back into support the program, so into the operation of the program as well as salaries. They are not supposed to be deficit spent. We are not supposed to be ending the year and/or spending beyond what is in the revenue for that account. We have not been complying with that since 2019. Those numbers show that there was a net loss in years prior, but we never necessarily got into a point where we were negative in the deficit fund. We are now negative in the deficit, negative in the,
Negatives get paid for?
hmm?
Other than negative balance of 1 year, was it from the monies to the new year?
So we haven't necessarily found a root cause. There's a multitude of reasons that factor into the deficit and how it occurred. But we currently have a deficit of, as we go back to that original slide, I think it's about $21,000 that we will need to cover at the upcoming town meeting.
Will it be increased by the 8,000?
Nope, the 8,000 is a revenue, so it helps
What
us.
would it be about that you would bring to town meeting?
So that would be,
Roughly 20,000.
if I go back to the,
500?
so that would be the $24,286.
24,000?
Correct.
And how many Groveland attendees were there this year?
Just this year was 67 families.
Yeah, I want to know how many were Groveland.
The 26 of those, of the 117 residents were non-Groveland residents.
26 with non, and there was, how much, and how many was the total again?
117 total minus 26.
Minus 26. So there's like 100 and some odd from Groveland.
So like we said, there was a change in enrollment for a multitude of reasons. The
Yeah, it was mismanaged, okay? Plain
So-
and simple.
The basic reason for us bringing this forward is that we recognize there's a problem, so therefore, from a financial standpoint, we want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. So we recognize that we had operated incorrectly and therefore need to rectify the issue. So there's a multitude of options available to the town as to what the town would like to do moving forward. The recommendation was made that we could potentially hold on the upcoming year, given the time constraints, and assemble a working group, or to try and do additional research into what structure would support the program moving forward, including a fee restructuring, hiring, and taking into consideration all of those liabilities and operation moving forward. The other option is to try and move forward with an RFP, as the select board had put forward, which would allow for a third party or nonprofit to come in and to operate the program on the site, and then the revenues that would be generated and profit for utilizing the facility would be provided to the town so that they could then utilize that money as an additional revenue source. So there's different options that are before us. The RFP is currently in motion in terms of being drafted. It has not been finalized at this point in time. And it is, again, the recommendation that not just to discontinue the program and say, oh, we'll wash our hands with it, but to recognize that there's a lot of issues that are before us, and if we're going to be moving forward, we need to be thoughtful about our approach and make sure that it's done correctly and has the proper checks and balances and oversight to make sure that this does not happen again. So that is what we have before us, and that, as the chair had said, the board had made a recommendation. And so, as I had mentioned at the last meeting, I wanted to bring forward to the finance board and the select board as soon as I was alerted as to the issue, and make sure this was an agenda item to present to you so that you can have time to discuss as necessary.
So do we have data prior to 2018?
We do.
I think that would be relevant in this case, because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was a very profitable kind of program up until 2019. And I see one of the biggest differences here is camp supplies. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall, somewhere around there, a lot of the camp equipment they were using, like the water slides and things like that, were ruined, destroyed, somehow needed to be replaced. So a decision was made to kind of put that money back into the capital, purchases there that year to bring those items back up to snuff of what they had been. So I think that's the reason. I mean, that's almost $20,000. Is that 6,000 to 26 to $20,000 increase? You took the $20,000 out of that.
In the trend that you'll see in the earlier data, which we can share with you, you'll see that a lot of the monies that were made in terms of profit were expended upon the Bagnell Elementary School. So some of those expenses are questionable in nature in terms of spending a revolving account on asbestos removal, spending about $98,000 on the field. So it ate into a significant amount of the reserves that were in the program. So the program was not setting aside enough money to make sure that it operated. It took the actual profit that it was making and reinvested it in other areas and capital areas that weren't necessarily for the program. Yes, the program was at the Bagnell School, so some of those things do come at a benefit for when they are using it, but there was never any structure built into that to reserve some of those funds for future issues such as a bad year or a broken slide or additional camp supplies that were necessary. And because those reserves were never baked into the program, this started to grow, and so you'll slowly see the profits start to dwindle in those early years as well, so that when it got to the 2019 time where those replacements were made, you are correct, they didn't have monies to draw from other than the registration, so their revenue was not keeping up with their expenditures, and there were no changes in fee, and there was no changes in programs, and transportation increased, and things just kind of snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. So it can be done better. It needs to be done better if it is going to be done better. And it starts with making sure that that structure is there. And it has to be a structure that's a sound structure that's identified clearly, and it's not going to change from director to director recommendations. There needs to be oversight. So if you're going to change something, why are you changing that? Is somebody watching that? Because there were so many different changes between directors and the way that they ran that there was a complete disconnect from the town. And so it made it very challenging even just to find information as to enrollment or when discounts were provided or just the information that even some of the board members asked. It was very hard to find because they had separate folders. They were apart from the town. They were using their own personal computers or personal phones. So to get that data makes it very challenging as well. So that all, again, ties into that structural component, that they be issued a town laptop, that they be issued a town phone, that they centralize all their files here. So all of that needs to be considered when we talk about whether or not we move forward and how we move forward. And my recommendation is that's going to take time to make sure it's done properly. But not that it can't be done, just that we need to do it in a manner that makes sense so that we don't find ourselves ever in this situation again.
Right, and I think a lot of the cause is the director change from 20 to 21, from 2021 to 2022, from 2022 to 2023, and on and on and on. That doesn't help. There's no consistency there. But prior to that, I think the gentleman had run it for 14, 15 years, right? So, and there were very, very few problems. Now, I agree that that has always been used as somewhat of a cash cow to fund other things that the town needed that would ordinarily would have had to been paid through the budget or, you know, to dip deeper into the taxpayer's pocket, like the, you know, remediation of the classroom floors and air conditioners, the fields in back. And maybe it was improperly used over the time, who's to say? But if we can make it better, you know, to me, as like the more I look at this, it's like a freshman business 101 class. We're all making the infamous widget. Not that I'm going to compare children to widgets, but I think that the business model is pretty simple. I know we have the demand, and it'd be a shame for the working parents. I know for my wife and I, if we hadn't had that summer program, I don't know how we would have survived during the summer months. Most parents.
But that program doesn't have a lot of volunteers.
Huh?
That program doesn't have any volunteers. Where the baseball thing, that's all run by volunteers.
A lot of things are run by volunteers and a lot of things aren't.
Yeah, but-
It's just a fact of life. But regardless, the program did throw off cash most every year it was run, and that cash was used to do other things that were needed, right, wrong, or indifferent. It is what it is. But I think it can be, to your point, it can be done profitably. I think you just have to take a deeper dive into the numbers. I think you can make it easily profitable, and then control those profits in a way that's more conducive to advance the goals of the summer program, or to better fund it so that it is more than self-sustaining. It is profitable in some sort of way, the way it used to be for years.
If I can jump in here real quick, I mean, I'm looking at it and I see that it was profitable last year and it raised half of the deficit. And I mean, and that with a scaled back program, even without the field trips and a reduced number of kids, it was still able to turn a profit. So I think, walking away from it, yeah, it's got its challenges, but walking away from it, or, taking that away might be maybe a misstep.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Adam, it turned a profit last year, which proves that it can be profitable. We just maybe have to, do things a little bit differently, but I'm convinced it still can be profitable in the future. And I know it's just a vital resource to parents in the community, that both parents just need to work nowadays. It's not want, it's just an absolute have to.
But that's all, so that's making the huge assumption that you can find the person to run it. And that's the biggest challenge. And even this past year, we found somebody sort of at the last minute, right? And then what I worry about is finding that person. It was great when we had a long-time director. Everything was in place. And there weren't a lot of surprises. And then, and a longtime director brings, seasoned camp counselors and CITs and families that are going to be using it, and there's a lot of expectations. But now we're at the point that it needs to be put back together, and that's a big task. And I worry about putting that task on the town. Specifically, I worry about getting a director. So we open up enrollment in January. We're now obligated to, offer some sort of camp for these kids this summer. And what if there's an issue? What if that management team doesn't last the whole summer or something? Then we're responsible to put all that back together. And that's just what I think is a lot for the town to take on. I like the idea of, subbing it out to somebody that this is what they do and this is what they know, and they have the processes in place, and removing some of that responsibility and burden away from the town hall, the residents, the taxpayers. The other question that I have is, we did bring that deficit back in half this year, but it wasn't really running a very good camp. You don't know that same structure could even be replicated this year. Like, are those kids all going to want to come back? Are they, and if we're going to do a camp, I think that we want it to be a camp that everybody's kind of excited about. And my question is, if we pay the deficit in the revolving account, and then say, go through some sort of a exploration, and even if it's not this summer, if it's the summer after, if the camp comes back and there is profitability over time, we can repay that deficit back to the town via the stabilization or something? Would that be one option, one route to take?
So I think my concern, as someone who relies on these types of programs in the summer, if you get rid of the program altogether, next year, you're not gonna get people back. They're gonna have moved on to, trying to put their kids in at other camps.
So what's wrong with that?
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, if that's the decision that the town wants to make in terms of, look, we're not gonna do the camp. It's, in my opinion, you decide you're not gonna do the camp, and that's the end of it, because you're not gonna necessarily be able to generate the attendance in the future.
I mean, there's a
once
whole
kids-
bunch of human resource issues here and obligations. I don't know what the town is responsible for when it's set up in a revolving account and they pay all the bills. Whose payroll system? They use the town payroll system.
Correct.
Yeah. So this is just not simple. We were lucky because the first one was a teacher. So he was available in the summer. So, and he was very organized. He made good money, but we don't have that. Do we need to manage another person? And how many employees did they have?
It depends on how many campers they have, because that's like one of the variables.
Well, I don't know. What was the total here?
So there was 117 registrants, and for the actual employees for 2024 was
The junior counselors don't get paid. They're volunteers.
the CIT is correct. So 13. We had 18 staff, not including the director.
But that must also be somewhat of a rolling number. There was a large number of those attendees, the campers, that went either 3 or 4 weeks, which is half of the program. So that's another large challenge. You need to staff it.
So that was the issue that we had. A lot of the feedback from the counselors was that, particularly this year, they said that they were not happy with the way that the structure was, because in prior years, they would have a set amount of hours and they would expect it to be there. And this year, the director sent them home. So if there wasn't enough people, he would send them home, so we didn't have to pay them. So I know that a lot of the counselors that signed up for the job were very unhappy because of the type of environment. They signed up for summer work and they expected to work X amount of hours, and depending on what would happen, they wouldn't be able to. So I do know that that was something that was, stated by the counselors as something that they did not like and that they would not like to see moving forward, because they would not take those jobs and they would find those other jobs that had the consistent hours that they're looking for.
Well, you lowered the deficit for his year. So, but again, there's a whole bunch of human resource issues here. All right. So we have time for that, to do it right.
That's the only reason I'm bringing it forward. However, however the select board want to move forward, whatever the town decides, it is a town decision. It is not my decision. But in my experience and in my expertise, I am very uneasy about moving forward without having that structure, and I want that decision to be made by the town, and I want it to be on record that I have my reservations about moving forward and making sure that this does not fall back to the taxpayers unless it's done correctly. So however the select board and the town wants to move forward, we will move forward with putting in advertising out tomorrow for a director, or moving forward with the RFP, which is already in motion. I just want to make it known that I am a little concerned about making sure that this deficit does not happen without that structure in place.
And I think that's a perfectly appropriate stance. I don't think any of us would want anything to fall back on the town
Of course not.
for any reason.
Especially this board, that would be irresponsible of us.
So I know, one of the things that I had said was, do we want to try to determine if there's a a program structure, if we can get some data, understanding that there are the, you know, the non-financial aspects that have to be considered as well, but did we want to try to work through different scenarios? Is that something we want to take on? Do we want to wait and see what the select board does on Tuesday, at their next meeting? What, is there a consensus among us?
I think it's a fun little project for a freshman class.
I feel like if the select board's got to make the decision, we should probably wait till the decision's made before we move forward with anything. If it's not our decision to make, we can assist them however needed, but they ultimately are the ones that have to make the decision.
True, but if we can show them a business model that works and it's profitable,
Sure, up the fees.
it would help them in determining what they should do going forward. Fee structure is
That's-
one, two-tiered fee structure is
point.
another. There's no reason, you go to college in Massachusetts, if you're a state resident, you pay one fee. If you're a resident in New Hampshire, you pay more, right? Everybody does it. It's not,
That's for darn sure.
yeah, so it's,
Paying two tuitions.
you know, there's lots of things to be considered. There's lots of ways to make that widget work, I think. Throw me the numbers.
But that goes back to the question. Who's going to show you the numbers? Is that something that we're going to take on as a town? Is that something, I mean, it's not our say, I know it's coming from the Board of Selectmen, but that's a huge management project. Who in our town hall has time for that? Is that a priority for our town at this point in time? I know it's a program that we want to have, but again, it's resources from us, it's management from us. If there's another body of people who already have all of that information that would be prepared to run it, then sub it out. If that person exists. Or that outfit, or that team, or, whatever.
Until then,
I think that would be the first step. I think that's the most efficient way to go about it, is it not?
it might be, but right now I'll run with the ball I have. The only ball I have is the historical statistics that exist. I don't have anything else, but I can run those numbers.
Well, if it's Business 101, then you start from scratch. What you generate for revenue is what you would base your program on. So the historical trend doesn't necessarily apply in this case since it's been such a roller coaster. We can give you the numbers, but it's not going to tell you the story that you want. If it's a simple equation as to revenue to expenditure, then the program that you create based upon the fees and the number of registrants is what you need to put together. Then that's where you start, because that's where you're going to tell yourself, I'm bringing in X, I'm capping grades, I'm capping this, I'm seeing that the fees are comparable to these communities, and you look from there, you'll be able to generate that. The information we have is not sufficient to give you that background. It should show you over the years what's happened in the fluctuation, but it's not going to show you the program that you need to create in order for it to be effective. So it doesn't necessarily, we can give you all the data we have. I mentioned earlier to a board member that asked, I'll run the reports in Active and we can give you the spreadsheet of expenditures, but I still believe strongly that it's going to be based upon the Business 101 model where you look at what revenue you're generating and what expenditures you intend to play out.
And the revenues I generate depend on how many widgets I sell, or how many widgets I'm planning on selling, estimating on selling.
And I can include the inventory of supplies that we have so you can see what we have on hand. I asked the last director before on 2023 to provide an inventory. I said, also please provide me an additional column of the asset condition so that we can make sure that it's, what you're looking at, if the slide needs to be replaced, is it good, fair? So that individual had started to put that information together, so I can provide that information to any individual who's looking to try and get a program together and structure something based upon the materials that have already, been, secured. I'm happy to do so, but I will say that from a town's perspective, as we enter into budget season with the capital improvement plan, with the tax rate, with the forecasting, with the getting the budget into ClearGov, getting everything out, it would be a lot for us to take on internally, and we would require a vote to be made to make sure that our time was spent with whatever request was made.
Okay. Make it up myself.
Has anyone reached out to the VZ Park one? No. So maybe there's common ground there. And the other thing is we don't need to take in non-residents.
Who runs the VC Park one?
I don't know, I see kids out there. I don't know, no one's reached out to find out.
There's a
okay?
nonprofit.
How about we start there?
Well, that's what Mike Dempsey talked about in the last board.
Well, then, let's get a name from Mike Dempsey.
Treetop is, grandkids go there, and that's when he made the recommendation that perhaps the program could be subbed out by somebody else that's in that line of work.
So what do they do, rent or lease space from a VC Park during the summer to
They rent it.
rent it?
Okay, now what?
All right, so then I guess at this time, we'll wait and see what happens with the select board and where they choose to proceed with it, and if people would like to at their own.
Here we have a deficit, and we're gonna take that money away, okay, from some department that needs the money, okay, to run this town. And now we're getting all in, oh, Mike, you're right here. Just a quick question, you know who runs the VZ Park Rec program?
Summer camp?
Can you send
I
the
talked to
the
her.
contact information?
She thinks it's a pretty big challenge for the town to run a camp.
Okay, yeah, well,
She succeeds by staying pretty small. But she's supposed to send me some information. If I can get it soon, I'll get it to you guys.
do you know how many people go, how many kids go to
How
that?
many kids? Like somewhere around 75 per week.
Oh, there's that many.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
How many
they've
weeks?
given it for, I want to say like 8 years.
It's been successful.
Yeah.
How many weeks?
I think like 8 weeks. And my 5 grandkids go there, so I approve.
Well, that's because you're the mayor.
Does she have a friend that wants to do the same thing at the Bagnell School next summer?
All right.
Is the one at VZ Park, there's no, is it open to all residents, Groveland, non-Groveland, it's to anybody, and there's
Yeah.
no, Groveland gets in for prioritization or anything like that?
Anybody?
I didn't know it was that big, that's interesting.
Is
Okay.
there anything else on this topic? All right.
Is anything else to be had?
All right, so the next item on the agenda is to plan the next meeting, which according to the schedule that we had distributed at our last meeting, that would be November 20th at 6 PM. And then just so it's on everyone's calendar as well, November 26th is the Pentucket Regional School District's State of the Schools meeting, where they will give us our update on their budget as of this point in time. Does anyone have any questions about that or foresee any issues with that date of November 20th?
No, 20th is fine. So they picked the 26th to do a budget meeting the week of Thanksgiving. Since they want a lot of people to attend.
Moving on, the next item on the agenda is just any other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting. I don't know if anyone has anything. Adam, do you have anything? Okay. Jim,
No.
Ruth?
No, but I would like to thank the Groveland Electric Company for doing some brush cleaning on my street today and taking down all of that bittersweet that was aggressively growing up our pole. It was just good. I was like, why is there a truck out there? And it was just nice to see them clean all that up. And so it's good to see. Tax dollars at work. Thank you.
Great. And then Bill, do you have anything?
Just hoping anybody that has relatives in Milton's path are safe out of harm's way.
Okay,
God
great.
bless all of them.
I just wanted to let everyone know on the board that I did forward an email that the town clerk had sent out about the new welcome package that they will be providing to new committee and board members. They asked me to distribute it, and then if anyone reads through it and has comments, questions, to reach out to the clerk's office so that they could get that feedback on the packet that they put together. So, all right, I think then if there's nothing else from anybody, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn at 6:44 PM.
I will second that. Any discussion? Adam?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Ruth? Melissa, yes. Bill?
Please.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.